Hello everyone, I'm Daragard, and I'm the solo developer behind the game Tribute. I've been developing this N64 Zelda-like over the past couple months, and so far, I'm really happy with how development has been going. Tribute takes inspiration from some of my favorite Zelda games, like Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time, and Twilight Princess. I love the classic Zelda formula, with the puzzles and combat and exploration, and I would love to be able to bring some of those ideas to life in Tribute. I named my game Tribute because I wanted to pay tribute to a franchise that has heavily influenced my interests and goals, that franchise being The Legend of Zelda. On a more personal note, I wanted to pay tribute to the people in my life, not in any way that is obvious, just a little way for me to add some life into the game. My hope is that each person that plays Tribute will be able to see parts of their own story in the game, so that they can make their own tributes to the people and things in their life. The project began when I realized that Nintendo wasn't going to be making a new classic Zelda game. I had already been programming games on and off for the past 10 years, and so I already had some experience in development. Tribute is a whole new scale of project, and one that I'm quickly realizing I underestimated the amount of time it would take to complete such a game. I'm determined to stick with this project though, because I've always wanted to make a game just like this. I think the Zelda game that immersed me the most was Ocarina of Time. I have so much respect for what Nintendo was able to do with such limited hardware, and from a game design perspective, it is one of the most well-paced games ever. The tutorial is completely invisible to the player, and I never felt like I didn't have a direction to go in. Also, one of the benefits of choosing an N64 art style is that you can imply the detail instead of rendering it directly. Then came the spiritual successor to Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess. The dungeon design of this game was easily one of the best in the entire series. My favorite dungeons were the ones with puzzles where you had to render the entire thing in your head in order to figure out how flipping a switch on one side of the dungeon would translate and let you get across to the other side of the dungeon. Fast forward to 2017, where the best video game trailer ever dropped, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. My mind reeled with the possibilities of what you could do in this game. Nintendo promised me that if I saw it, I could go to it, and boy did they deliver. I remember the first day I got it. I plugged the cartridge into my Switch and sunk hours into the game on that very first play session. I absolutely loved the art style, and the combat was better than anything in previous Zelda games. However, something seemed to be wrong. I loved Breath of the Wild. It was one of the greatest games ever made. But was it one of the greatest Zelda games? I know Nintendo was trying to go back to its roots, to the original Legend of Zelda on the NES, but that's not what I had come to love about the franchise over the years. I wanted giant themed dungeons, massive boss fights, and a story that progressed as you played through the game. This all brings me back to Tribute. I wanted to make a game with the rock-solid foundation of the traditional Zelda games without disregarding modern game design techniques. Welcome to Pinerest. This peaceful lakeside village invokes the feeling that generations could pass without a thing changing. It is tucked in the shadow of a large mountain, with a large field to the south. Near the entrance to the town sits a massive windmill, and while it may not function right now, maybe someone will be able to repair it and restore its former glory. If you were to travel south, you would find a large clearing with a massive tree, a little house, and a small wooden structure. Unfortunately, no one has been able to figure out what the structure is even for. If we go back into Pinecrest, we can go behind one of the villagers' houses and find a large empty clearing. The villagers should keep an eye on that though, because large areas without people tend to spawn monsters. If you were to go behind another villager's house, you'd find a small graveyard. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's anything left of the original inscription that was there. However, you can be sure that the people buried here are very important to the villagers of Pinecrest. The east side of Pinecrest opens up to a massive lake, which is one of the defining characteristics of the town. Look at the shore on the opposite side of the lake. The features are so small, it would take forever to swim across the entire thing. On the dock there are two people. One of them is fishing, and one of them is just relaxing. Rokar is the fisherman, and if you were to talk to him, he might be able to lend you a boat so that you can get across to the other side of the lake. So that was Pinecrest. There's still a lot to get done. For example, if you were to take a look at any of the NPCs, you would notice that they don't have eyes, shadows, or textures applied to any of them. They're just colors. I was really struggling to figure out a way to texture them in a way that I was happy with, especially the eyes. The buildings are also quite plain and have no way to enter them. I would love to be able to do interiors for all of the buildings in this village, but after I redid them several times, I scrapped them for this build. There are also a couple of caves missing from this area. One of them is going to be right here, and the other one is going to be up on that ledge. Another thing I plan on adding into Pinecrest is trees. I've been thinking about how to implement the trees in my game, and whether to add them in Godot or in Blender, and recently I've decided that I'm going to implement them in Godot so that I can apply a shader to the leaves to make them move with the wind. If you were to play the game for yourself and talk to Rokar, who is the fisherman at the lake, the text boxes would look like the default buttons, because they are, and the transition to the next area is very harsh. For this first build, all I was trying to accomplish was basic scene loading, and I didn't try to apply any transitions or anything. But now that you've already seen a preview of the next area, we might as well go into it. This is the Forgotten Grove. It is a valley carved in the middle of a massive forest with blooming trees. The paths are intertwined around each other, adding to the strange, out-of-this-world feeling. No one has stepped foot in the Forgotten Grove for as long as anyone can remember. Actually, that isn't even a good comparison, because most people don't even know if the Forgotten Grove exists. The caves, on the other hand, seem to be much more lived in than the grove. The tunnels seem to be carved out of the rock on purpose, creating the sharp 90-degree angles found in them. Some rooms also seem to be modified by intelligent hands, but others seem to have no explanation at all. If we exit the cave, we'll find ourselves back in the Forgotten Grove, this time on a previously inaccessible area. Now, we can finally cross the bridge and enter the cave on the opposite side. This cave system is much more vertical than the last one, but it also has those same 90-degree angles that make it look like it was lived in. Near the top of the cave system is a path that splits into three directions. The straight and right paths lead to the inside of giant trees, like the ones found on the outside of the cave. The first tree has some sort of structures built onto the inside of it, so that you can climb it. The second tree has a large stone pattern in the ground. Legend has it that this is the lost gate to hell. Every couple of decades, a new adventurer sets out to try to find the lost gate, but they never return. Just like Pinecrest, this area has a lot left to get done. One of the things that I've struggled with to create properly is the entrances and the exits to the caves. By using a website called NoClip, I've been able to closely inspect the entrances and exits in Ocarina of Time and how Nintendo was able to create them, but I haven't been able to replicate that. I have some ideas for how to fix this, but if anyone who's watching already knows how to do this, please drop a comment and let me know. I'm also aware that the areas feel really empty right now, and that's because there aren't any enemies or interactable objects for the player to use. My plan is to scatter grass, enemies, and other random things around to fill up the world with interesting things to do. However, even without all the enemies and interactable objects, I'm really excited about these two areas that I have because I think they're great starts to memorable locations. If we take a look inside the first cave, you'll notice all these little doorways scattered around the cave. Eventually, I plan to put doors in there to add to the artificial feel. I also plan to put a number of enemies in the hallways of this cave, so as you're walking around, always look around the corner for enemies. I think that my favorite area from either of the caves is this one. This room has a covered path around the perimeter of the bottom with an infinite pit leading into nothing. The other cave system has the most vertical traversal of any other section of the game up to this point. Now that I've playtested the game a bit more, I also realized that the hallways are really small, and you can't easily see around them. At a minimum, you can expect this to be fixed in a future update. I want to tell you about a secret area that's only going to be in this build of the game. The link to the build can be found in the description below. If you walk toward the entrance of Pinerest, which is directly underneath the windmill, you'll be transported to a new area called the sewers. Originally, it was going to be the tutorial dungeon for Tribute, but the dungeon wouldn't have appeared until 15 to 20 minutes into the game, and by that point, I feel like it would have procrastinated the rest of the game for too long. Since I don't plan on keeping the sewers in the final game, I'm going to remove it after this version. That means that this is going to be the last time that you can run around in this location for yourself. While it doesn't have all the features that would allow you to move around it in the way that it's intended, if you're creative enough, you should be able to get to all the rooms in the temple. In addition to Pinecrest, the Forgotten Grove, and the characters that I've made so far, there's actually a lot more content that didn't make it into the build. Actually, I fully modeled one of the cities that's going to be in the game, but I don't know if I want to keep it in its current state, which is why it's not in the build. I also built a lot of the systems that my game will be running on. This includes a general state machine, which the player is currently using. I can also extend it so that it can work for different types of cameras or for any type of enemy that I make in the future. Some of the other high-profile systems that I worked on were the interactable object class, dialogue, quests, and inventory. If you want to see a more complete list of all the features that I worked on, you should check out my devlog found on my itch page. I think that implementing all of these features at once at the very beginning of the project was very beneficial because now I know exactly how I'm able to use the assets that I make. For example, if I hadn't implemented ledge climbing, then I wouldn't know how high the player was able to reach when making the maps. I am so excited to finally be sharing this video with you all. It has taken a lot longer to produce than I originally wanted, but I hope that that shows with an improved quality of video. Obviously, not everything is perfect. I've been trying to use an incremental workflow so that I can avoid the common pitfalls of game development. Primarily among those is perfectionism. I think that making the best game that I can is important, but I also have to understand that not everything will be perfect, especially the first time around. I would also like to hear from you, the viewer. Is there any bosses, dungeons, or characters that you would like to see in the game? Leave a comment to let me know your ideas. If you like the direction the project is going, give the video a like. And if you don't want to miss any future updates, subscribe. You should also check out the project page on itch so that you can play this very early version of the game. May you adventure well, and until next time, peace.